Just talking to Art. There we go. Woo! All right. We are live coming at you from, no, I'm kidding. Okay, so hi everyone, welcome. We are so excited and honored to have the 2023 Nebula and Hugo Award finalist, Marie Vibbert. She is here with us. Thank you so much for taking time to be here and talk about all your works and also the one that was up for an award. So I'm going to tell us a little bit about Marie, so she can have some bragging rights, without having to brag about herself, because she is quite the baddie. So let's just start with her writing career, right? So she has sold over 90 short stories to places like Analog, FNSF, Nature, and more. Her debut novel about a biker gang in outer space, yes, you heard that right, biker gang in outer space, Galactic Hellcats, came out in 2021 and was called a rip-roaring space heist by Publishers Weekly. It was a long listed by the British Science Fiction Award. Very feminist. We love that. She is, aside from being a writer, she's also a software developer in Cleveland, Ohio. Represent. She attended the Clarion Writers Workshop in 2013 and joined the Science Fiction Writers of America in 2014. Kat coming in clutch, dropping the links to her books and to all her Goodreads accounts. So also, she joined the Science Fiction Writers of America in 2014. She belongs to the Cleveland Science Fiction Writers Workshop, headed by Mary Torzillo. I hope I didn't butcher that, but so it's unbelievable. You are so young and thriving so much already. You've done so many things. It's really inspirational. She's also been, fun fact, medieval squire, a lineman for the Cleveland Fusion women's tackle football team. What? And has ridden 18% of the roller coasters in North America. So pretty savvy when it comes to roller coasters too. She lives with her husband, Brian Crick, and their teen child in Cleveland Heights, Ohio. And yeah, so if there's anything else you wanted to, tell us about you, but that's kind of a lot already. It seems like you have a lot of talents, and I'm wondering if a lot of that inspires your work too. I'll leave the questions for later, but maybe you can just start off and tell us a little bit about your novelette.
Okay. So we built this city was definitely a passion project. I was amongst other things, I was raised by a single father. My father was a construction worker, a laborer in the AFL-CIO local 310. And well, he started in local 496 and then he moved to 310 and then I think he retired from 310. Anyway, doesn't matter what local he was in. So strikes and labor issues were always very important to me. Something I grew up hearing a lot about at home. My dad did go on strike. We did get like leaflets in the mail telling us we're never to shop. So I have never actually bought anything at a Walmart in my entire life. Because you do not cross a picket line. But I was having a hard time writing anything about it. And one of my goals was like for decades has been, I want to write something about labor rights in space. And I had read some cool stuff about that. There was actually the world's first strike in outer space has already happened. It was a labor slowdown on the International Space Station. Yes.
Wow.
They were protesting the fact that their time was like scheduled within 5-minute blocks. And they were like, we can't do this. I can't think. I'm exhausted. And they're like, your time is very valuable to us. I'm like, yeah, now watch how valuable it is if we sit here. And it only lasted like 50 minutes and NASA caved and said, all right, we're gonna negotiate with you to have more reasonable schedules. So space and labor organization, very important. I looked at international space law, which is, there's not a lot of it yet. Mostly we just have like the rescue law that, anyone in outer space must make reasonable attempt to rescue anyone else in outer space who needs it. Done. I mean, no brainer. It's a copy over from the law on international oceans. And yeah, so then the problem was, how do I write about labor organizing in short form? Because most of what I write is short form. And if there's one thing I can tell you about labor organization and movements, they are slow. Um, when you go on strike, you don't go on strike for your benefit, you go on strike for your children's benefit, for the next generation of people who are going to take over your jobs. So that was kind of hard to fit into a short length. And the funny thing is, we built this city started as a flash. It was going to just be a flash piece. Really just that beginning part where she's washing the windows and thinking about her mom. And I wrote that all in like one burst in, I think, March of 2020. It was right after shutdown. I took a class. It was right after shutdown. I was working mandatory overtime as an IT person and teaching septuagenarian professors how to use Zoom for the first time. It was fun. It was a fun time. No offense to the, you know what, some of those septuagenarian professors were really smart. Others, I mean, we had 40-year-old professors too who were really dragging their heels. So anyway, I didn't have a lot of time to write. So I belonged to this group, Literary Cleveland, and Literary Cleveland was like, we're going to do online classes. I'm like, yay. And there was one called Write 6 Stories in 6 Weeks. And there was just a different flash fiction prompt once a week. And this was like the second or third week, the prompt was write about somebody doing something while thinking about something else. And I'd been kicking around this idea about running a strike. And I was thinking about different jobs, and the window washers on Venus was the thing that stuck with me. So I started writing just that opening scene. And I wrote that opening scene. I was like, this is good. I love it. Is it a story? And then I struggled with it for most of the year, trying to make it complete without turning it into a novel. And I think it was really fighting against me, wanting to be longer and longer. So it became my first novelette. It's the first thing I ever wrote in that length.
That is so cool. It's yeah, it's interesting like how you know, our stories are kind of like our babies, and they start off as maybe it's just gonna be a flash fiction, and then it just has all this potential. And like you phrase it almost like you didn't really have a choice, you know, you just let the story be told, and it had to be told in that format. Do you think that in the flash fiction format, um that it just didn't, like, what was really missing? Like, what was that final push that you're like, there's no way that I can get everything in this concise, like limited amount of wording?
Well, at first it was about showing the organization of the labor. And I was also going through a situation at work where we were trying to organize the workplace. And it was very frustrating, you know, all the reasons people gave for not signing on, which was mostly, I can't afford to lose my job. Like, no one can afford to lose their job. And it's illegal to fire somebody for organizing, but they'll do it anyway. Yes, but if we all join, that's the whole thing with collective bargaining. It's like you have to all join in so that they can't reprise against anyone individually. But that's neither here nor there. I realized that I had to I had like the setup and the problem, and then I had to then the problem is like, you know, at first I was like, well, then I just have them decide to organize, and when she decides she's on board, that's the epiphany, that's the ending. But it didn't feel complete. It didn't feel like enough because there were so many open-ending questions, you know. And so yeah, it just kept getting inching longer and longer and longer. As I revised it and revised it and revised it. And finally, I asked myself, look, like, and my writing workshop, I belong to a writing workshop, and I made them read it. My writing bestie read this poor thing 5 times. Um, and they kept saying, everybody, not just my writing bestie, you know, you need to resolve the strike. We need to know, do they win or do they lose? And I was like, I can't do that. And it was when I stopped and I said, well, I was teaching a class on writing short stories, and I was like, you know, you're ending should reflect your beginning. The beginning contains the ending. If you begin with this situation or this problem or this question, you have to end that situation, problem, or question. And the story begins with her relationship with her mother. So that's when I realized I had my real ending. And yeah, it kind of gave me chills. I was like, oh, this is the ending. Um, so it was a troubled birth. I don't normally do, I think I did 11 separate drafts, which is way more than I usually do on a short fiction. But again, it was my first novelette, so I'm not as comfortable, I guess, with that length. And it clearly needed that many drafts, and it worked for me because this is my first Hugo nomination, my first Nebula nomination. First, it was nominated for a something else. It won Clark's World Reader's Choice Award. So yeah, sometimes hard work pays off.
Yes, I love that. That is so cool. And yeah, so that now I want to ask, do you think that you'll be writing more novelettes then? Since clearly it seems like you have a talent for that. I know you are more comfortable with short stories, or that's been more like your history, but are novelettes your future?
I definitely want to try another one. I'm just going to have to wait to get that idea that fits in that space. That's a little longer because I feel like I've gotten really good at short fiction and flash fiction. Like I know how to write flash now. I dedicated myself 1 year to just writing flash fiction because I really wanted to get into nature, and I did. That was my New Year's resolution. But I wrote like 20 flash fiction pieces before I got the one that got into nature. But it really taught me about structure to make things that short. And then I get this idea, like, in a flash fiction, you got like room for one twist. In a short story, you got room for like two. And then in a novelette, you got room for like three. So finding something that needs that length. And I'm on the lookout for it now.
That's so cool. And it's rare to at least for me, that in my knowledge, to be able to have the skill to be good at writing short story, novelette, and now you also have novels, like novel length. So it's almost like you're progressing, but I personally think flash fiction is like harder
Oh,
for
no,
me.
flash fiction is way harder. And I wrote the novels first. I started
Okay.
out as a novel writer. I started out as
Okay.
a novel writer and I learned short stories because I was having trouble selling novels. And then it was through selling my short stories that honestly, it's a direct correlation. Both of my novels sold because of my short stories. Galactic Hellcats was bought by an editor who had purchased a short story for me before. And The Gods Awoke was bought by an editor who had read my short fiction before and contacted me and said, do you have a novel? And I'm like, here, take one of my novels, please. I've got gobs of them. So I learned to write novels first, then short stories, then flash. You are absolutely right. That is the progression of craft difficulty, in my opinion.
That is so cool. It's true, like the reverse. Yeah. Wow. Okay. That was going to be my next question. So that's good. And also, Greg here has a question for you that says, when do you feel a book is finished? And I guess that is also very particular based on, well, is it a short story, a novelette, or a novel? But maybe in this case, how did you know that your novel was finished?
Ah, well, in the case of both of my published novels, and my unpublished novels, I always start a novel with an idea of how I'm going to end it because you have to know how you're going to end it. Um, at least for me. Otherwise, you're just going to be wandering the hills, and out over here. But even though you have an idea where you're going to end it, I think Terry Pratchett talked about it as being like jumping a ravine and throwing a rope across a ravine. And he could just see like the point where the rope ended, and he didn't see like the bridge he was going to have to build to get there. Um, but so yeah, and I got my ending in mind. The way I write novels and knowing when it's done, this is okay. I want to focus on actually knowing when it's done, not the whole process. Knowing when anything is done requires a couple of things. One is, have you answered this basic story problem? Have you met the promises that you gave the reader in your opening? Then is, are you satisfied with the level of clarity throughout? Have you read through it beginning to end and enjoyed it? That's kind of, with Galactic Hellcats, I really knew it was done when I sat down to revise it, and I didn't want to stop reading until the end. And I was like, print it, this puppy's good. So yeah, generally when I write novels, now I'll tell you about, I actually teach a course in finishing and finishing your projects. It's called The Art of Finishing. Plug. It's on Apex Magazine's website. They have a teaching website called Reach Your Apex. So if you go to Reach Your Apex, you can pay, I don't know how much they charge, and watch a video of me with a PowerPoint explaining to you the art of finishing your work. It's an hour long, so I'm not going to get into that. But when I write my novels, I tend to start, like I said, I start with an idea and have this brilliant idea, right? Like, oh yeah, what if Tolkien, but science fiction with a mad scientist? And then I have the idea. Usually idea requires your genre idea, mad scientist, plus character idea, plus plot idea, plus how do I want it to end? What do I want the reader to end with? Do I want to make them happy? Do I want to make them sad? Do I want to make them chuckle? So then I write my beginning and I write my end, and I kind of fill out an outline. I kind of outline from the beginning and end to the middle, and I write an outline. Sometimes my outlines do have steps that say a miracle occurs, but I outline in the same document. I write in, and then I delete lines of outline as I write and replace them with writing. And sometimes I jump back and forth and change things. And then when that's all done, when I'm out of outline and it's all a novel, then I read through it from the beginning the way a reader would, see how it feels, and then usually discover that like my plot doesn't work and there's a terrible plot hole the size of a Volkswagen. And I delete 8 chapters and I re-outline those 8 chapters right in the middle, and then I redo it. And then if I'm happy with the plot, after I have the plot down, I do a character pass where I'm just looking at each of the characters' arcs. With Galactic Hellcats, I did a separate pass for Margot and Key and Zuleika to make sure that they each had their character arcs in place. And then I make my friends read it and I revise it. And then I send it out and it gets rejected. And then I revise it again and I send it out and it gets rejected. With short stories, let me tell you, generally speaking, my short stories, I draft them. They're much shorter. They go from like a 4-sentence outline to a short story draft to sent to my writing workshop. They give me feedback. I collate the feedback, decide who's right and who's wrong, revise, read through it. This is good. Submit it, get rejected. Submit it, get rejected. Revise. Submit, revise. And when somebody buys it, then I know it was done. That's honestly the way I do it with short stories a lot of the time. Probably.
I feel like we just got such an insider into this. Like, thank you so much for this gem. It's so true. Like, I love the way that you just phrased all of that. That's very, very helpful. And I feel like I almost want to quote you too. When someone buys it, that's how you know it's done.
And no, I keep a writing journal. Here, I'll show you my writing journal. Oh, don't fall over other books. So, writing journal. Here, I'll turn off my blur. Turn off blur. Okay, now you can see my whole home office. Writing journal. And I write in this all the time. And what I do most of all in it is it's basically just one long to-do list, like writing about writing and giving myself ideas. And thank you. The giant panda is important. And I always have a works in progress list in the front. and I keep track of if the works in progress are done or not at the beginning of the journal. Anyway, I'm only telling you this because I have sold stories and then had an unchecked checkbox that said, when Asimov's rejects story X, change the ending so that the girlfriend comes back. And I'm like, well, not doing that one. Cross out. I just cross out and says, can't, sold. So now you know how that's part of my process. This is my secondary brain.
Wow, that is so smart and so intricate. It's like writing Inception. Like, and you also have like your plan A, B, C, D. I love that because I'm right now when I'm trying to write, I feel like there's a lot of ways that I could take the story, but as you're writing, you have to choose one, right? But I didn't think to write about like kind of like a list, a checkbox of other alternative endings to just have as a safekeep in case, or for when it gets rejected, to go back and try the other ones and see which one sells. That's brilliant. I love your brain. Your brain is
And
wonderful.
yeah, and also I think the more short stories you write, the more you get better, the more you do it, like any other skill. The more football you play, the better you get playing football. The more you write, the better you get at writing. And if you focus on short stories, you'll get better at short stories. But the thing that struck me was that I can always write it again. I can always write another short story that's about strikes in space. As a matter of fact, I'm writing another one right now. It's going to be steel workers on Mars, but I already did window washers on Venus. Got to do steel workers on Mars. But that's why, sometimes you're like, when they talk about murdering your darlings, I don't really murder my darlings. I put them in the deep freezer so I can take them out again, make leftovers from them. Yeah. Got a whole fridge full of darlings.
Oh my gosh, you need to have like t-shirts. Like you have so many awesome sayings that I would love to wear on myself. Like, you know what I mean? Just like don't kill your darlings, just put them in the freezer. That's very true. I love that. I want to go back if you don't mind to where you mentioned that you have character arcs for each of your characters. So the work that I'm writing right now. Ooh, yes, the background. Love it. Shameless plug. Sorry, I have like ADD.
No,
So
same.
like what writer doesn't, right? No, I'm kidding. But what's his name? Yeah, so I'm a lot of my stories are like character driven, so I struggle with plot, but yours are plot driven, yet your characters are so fully fleshed. Like I'm only halfway through God's Awoke. Plug, plug. um, but I just all the characters, I still am learning more about them, but they all have, I can tell that they all have a backstory. Like they all feel real. And I'm just wondering, like, do you actually have documents on your computer where it's like character and sub character, like these are their life stories?
No, nope. Um, what I do is when I'm writing a novel, like I said, I make an outline that's in the document, and I'll have a second document, which I usually call wiki, Galactic Hellcats wiki, the Gods Awoke wiki, where I write down facts I have to remember. Hitra's mother's name is X. Eloi's brother's name is Y. But that's just, as I come up with them as I'm writing. I don't really believe in doing too much world building behind the page. I find when I was a teenager and I was going to write an epic fantasy with 15 main characters, and I made little trading cards for each of the characters and wrote full backstories and family trees and maps. I never wrote that. So and I think there's a reason why. Because you're using your you're using your creative energy to come up with all this stuff, and it's fun of its own right. And it's a different outlet than actually writing it. So I try to just have a galactic cheat sheet. And I'm working on this the sequel to Galactic Hellcats 2, and the cheat sheet is so much longer, and I blame myself. But I still find myself grabbing the book off the shelf because I didn't write down, Thane's sister's name, and I gotta find where they put it, where I put it. I didn't know she was going to become important. So I think the whole idea of character driven versus plot driven is a bit of a false dichotomy. I was told I couldn't do plots when I was younger. I was at a one-day conference with a big name who we all brought a short story. And first off, I didn't realize that when you sign up for one of these things, you should bring your best piece. I brought the story that was giving me the most trouble. I was the only girl. And yeah, the guy said, there's some lovely writing in this, but you have no plot. And I was like, okay, what do I do? And he says, I don't know, become a poet. And no, I'm like crying my eyes out. And another one of the students in the class comes up to me afterwards and he says, hey, I'm nobody too, but person has a problem. They try to solve it and fail. They try to solve it and fail. They try to solve it and succeed. That's a plot. And I was like, oh, this is why I also teach a class on plot, because plot can be taught. If you're not good at it, you are not doomed to be a poet. Although there's nothing wrong with poetry. I do poetry too. So generally when people say it's character oriented, what they really mean is that the plot steps are rooted in relationship or emotion. And when they say it's plot oriented, then the plot steps are rooted in conflict or external action. But they're both plots. And in both cases, all plots, whether they be very mechanical and very much about planning a heist at a spaceship dealership in Cleveland Heights, or very, very emotional and about a goddess figuring out who she is, both of those are really about creating an emotional journey for the reader, building up tension and releasing it. If I could get a little crude, I was reading a lot of fanfic at one point in my life, and it was the dirty kind. Not that it anyway. No judgment zone, but I was like, these are great. But they always feel like a complete story, even though nothing happens other than he looks at him, they get really hot, they have sex, and then it's ended. And I'm like, oh wait, but that is a plot. It created tension and then it released it. So think of plotting like porn. There. It's about that's like a microcosm of plot. You have an emotional journey right there. Conflict is not always about fighting. Sometimes conflict is about getting each other's clothes off as fast as possible.
Think of plot as porn. My gosh, the quotes. Can someone please make like a Tumblr of this woman? Like I can't. That's a brilliant. It's so true. And I feel so validated right now. Thank you for saying that, because no one's told me that I can't do plot. I've told myself that I can't do plot, because I'm just like, oh, well, everything's driven by emotion. So that means that I'm just plot challenged, but as I'm starting to write my novel, I'm like trying to throw in these like action scenes that don't make sense. And then I take it out and I was like, well, the story is still progressing, but I don't have a plot. So and now that you say it, it's like, it's true. One can't work without the other. Like imagine a story where it's just action. There's no emotions. People aren't reacting to the battles or people aren't reacting to the hike. You don't have a story. So it's really nice. I like the way you put that together, and you're just so right. I love it. I want to take all your classes. Keep plugging those in.
Yeah. In my class on dialogue, I love teaching. So, and this is kind of fun. Like, I think it's the career that I wanted when I was 7, but I decided that I had to go into a male-dominated profession, GAR, and ended up in computers. But now that I'm getting success with my writing, I'm getting this great outlet where I'm able to teach classes, and people are asking me to teach classes, and it's fun. But in my dialogue class, I talk about dialogue as conflict, that you should write dialogue the way you write a fight scene, which is also the way you should write a scene where two people are having breakfast, and not saying anything, right? It's all about the conflict between two characters or more and what they want out of this scene that the other person doesn't. It can, it can be grappling physically or it can be grappling socially. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. I'm curious now, since you're such a like a, so multi-talented, have you ever or would you ever consider writing a screenplay or turning one of your novels into a screenplay? Because you do have so many visuals. Like I would love to see this as a movie. Like I would, yes. Can we please make it happen? And just have like feminist series of Mary's work, but like just all in space, like yes. you
Oh
know
yeah, yeah. No, I've already got ideas for casting Aloe, yeah. But so many of my stories just happen to end up with a handsome young man who is in a vulnerable position. I'm sorry. I was early exposure. Early exposure to Cinderella is what I blame. Um, I still remember when I was like 6 or 7 or whenever I saw Cinderella as a little girl and I came out and was like, did you like it? It was like, yeah, but it would be great if she was a boy. And that's like 90% of what so id. Anyway, I have written screenplays, short ones for the Short Sweet Film Festival and the 48-hour film festival. Um, so I have an ISFDB, not ISFDB, I have a IMDb page. But I haven't done any long screenplays, and I'd really much rather somebody else just gave me money for the option. I have sold options once to a short story. The movie was not made, but selling options is kind of fun. You just get money, and they basically, a movie studio pays you for dibs. That's it. They optioned your story. You get money for nothing. And then if they don't make the movie in 2 years, you get your option back. Ooh. So if anybody wants to make a movie of Keep Talking, it is currently available. Actually, all my shorts fiction and long fiction is available. If you want to make a movie, see me. The other thing I've done is I've written comic book scripts, which are kind of similar, and you can see why comic books go into movies so well, because they're both a blending of the visual with the storytelling art.
I feel like I should have just started with the question, what haven't you written? That would have been like a shorter list because that is so cool. Definitely looking up your IMDb. Kat already plugged it in. Oh, Kat wants to know, who would you cast if you would cast someone for, and which novel?
Mm. Mm.
Or is it secret?
I'm actually having a hard time thinking about it. Um, like, no, I've been caught. No, I actually had an interview once where they asked me to cast the characters, and I had fun coming up with people, and I Googled, because Margot has to be half Vietnamese. That's non-negotiable, and um, Thane has to be gorgeous and have like just that tawny brown skin, and yeah, and Zuleika has to have very dark skin, and he has to just be very much a mutt and short and tiny. I actually joked about Aquafina playing Key, but um she'd be a different kind of Key, but maybe just as annoying as ever. Some people have told me they find Key annoying. And that hurts me because don't you know that's my self-insert character. Okay. We all have one. We all do that. Don't tell.
And some of us who have multiple personalities get to have multiple characters that are self-insert.
Yeah, ultimately, yeah, they're all of the characters are me. Key is me, Margot is me in a different way, Zulika is me in a different way. Even Thane is me, even the evil queen is me. I don't know, in some way.
So I'm curious, going back to like selling your short stories or your novels. So when you give them those rights, does that mean that they could do whatever they want with it? Like, could they change the ending and or is your name still on it? Like, what if it goes huge? Like, what
It depends on the contract. But when you're signing for options, the contract isn't that complex. It's just like they are going to develop the movie. And then when it reaches a later stage, then you get the contract where you negotiate, like, okay, are you going to have a credit? Are you going to have creative input? Et cetera, et cetera. But honestly, I mean, you know, I'm a blue collar girl from Cleveland, Ohio. If they offer to make me a movie, I'll just give me the money. I don't care. Make it a musical. I don't care. Um, I am not proud. Just like I have never once steaded a comma. When it's like this editor wants a million commas I didn't want, okay. This editor wants all my commas gone, okay. You're paying the bills. I will take it.
she's like, yeah, just whore out your darlings. It's fine.
It's fine. Ultimately, if it's, you know what, if it's successful, then you look good. And if it's not successful, you can blame what they did. Right?
Wise words, wise words. Yes. Oh my gosh. Oh, okay. Now we're taking a trip to space. Oh, that makes me curious. Going back to the idea of how much should you research and how much should you just let your creativity flow? Like, how much of space do you actually know? Or did you have to research that? Or is it pure just like brilliance fiction? Let us in on the tea.
Okay. Um, no, let's go with a nice non-moving background. Okay. I love space and I've been a space nerd forever. So, of course, I've read a lot of stuff about space already. I've read a lot of science fiction. I still, follow magazines online and read their articles whenever space comes up. But, well, it's how much research is necessary is up to you as an author, right? Obviously Galactic Hellcats, they have faster than light ships. I actually, one of the rejections I got for the novel was downright condescending, and it was a major publisher, and they were like, yeah, the characters were great, the plot was great, everything was great, weren't even any typos in it, but faster than light ships can't be small. Everybody knows that. And I couldn't possibly get beyond that with my suspension of disbelief. And I was like, faster than light ships can't be. Anyway, so you're quibbling over size. I mean, I understand that there, like some other writers have come up with explanations where you have these massive ships required to go FTL, but that's their choice. There's nothing in physics that says they have to be big. I figure once we've got it, flaunt it. So yes, anyway, this would technically be a space opera. I don't think about time dilation. I don't deal with any of that. Some of my stories, however, are more hard science fiction. Certainly we built the city as a hard science fiction story. There's nothing in there that isn't scientifically valid. I'm aided by the fact that one of my first readers is a NASA physicist. Dr. Jeffrey Landis is in my writing workshop, and he has the coolest job. He told me his title once, and it was something like senior imaginer or some shit. He gets to come up with stuff that NASA does. And he also he's part of the solar probe thing he was involved in. He was involved with the Mars rovers. that's all really cool. And I get to find out all of the stuff going on in Jeff's life. And if it happens to come into my fiction immediately thereafter, I cannot be blamed. But also, I also have Jeff read it, and he tells me, like, his only feedback on it wasn't on We Built This City. It was We Built This City is actually a sequel to a previous short story called A Place to Stand On, which is about Hortensia as a construction worker building the city. And Jeff's only feedback when he read the first draft was, yeah, your science is all very plausible. Everything you've invented works, except you say that the clouds look yellow, but if you're actually there in the atmosphere, they'd look white. That's the kind of insider knowledge.
I can't with that. I don't know how you put up with that. Oh my gosh, that's wild. That is so I'm just like blown away and processing at how much you've accomplished in like what, like 30 years? I don't know. You look so young. It's just like wild. Like
I turn 50 next month.
okay, next week's segment will be Marie Vilbert's hacks on how to keep her skin looking flawless and ageless. Oh my gosh, amazing. Yes, the skincare routine. We want to know. We'll save that for another segment. But that's quick. I mean, but you're also like a full-time, like, sport person and everything. I'm just like, I can't even words right now.
Well,
Like,
I'm not playing sports anymore. I was
I
put on injured reserve in 2015, and I'm afraid the team disbanded during the pandemic. But anyway,
yeah, well, but okay, so then when did you start writing? Like ever since you were a kid, or like when did you amp it up?
I decided I wanted to be a writer. Like, so there I was. I always enjoyed writing. Like, I remember back in first grade on spelling tests, writing a sentence. We had this thing where we had to use a word in a sentence, and I would make my 10 sentences tell a story. I loved writing. And then in second grade, we got to write a short story. And I still remember going up to my teacher and I was like, Mrs. Freeman, I found what I want to be when I grow up. I want to be a writer. This was the best. And she said, oh, sweetie, boys become writers. It's just, girls can be good at it in school. It's just like girls are good at cooking, but they become mommies and boys become chefs.
Why did it just get like 70 million degrees hotter in here? I am no.
No, flames from the side. No, I
Oh,
mean, I credit Mrs. Freeman. She sealed my fate because I have a very contrarian nature. I was like, oh, I can't, then I'm
yes.
absolutely doing this.
Yeah.
Um, and I would like staple together sections of scrap paper and write books and carry them around in a little book bag and try to get people to like buy them from me when I'm like, 12. I started writing a memoir when I was 11 because, I had lived a lot at that point. Um, I sent my first novel out in high school, because Isaac Asimov sold his first story when he was 19, so I needed to sell something before I turned 19. Um, and and it was a novel about a girl not unlike me, growing up in Ohio, who was secretly working for an intergalactic space spy agency after school. It was terrible. It was not good. But I got some very kindly worded rejection letters through high school. Um, and then I turned 19 and I was a fit of depression and decided to turn my attention to short stories and kind of focused on that. I mean, life took over a lot in my 20s. I was, working 3 minimum wage jobs and living in an apartment that cost like $90 a month and spending all my money on RTA passes. But I survived. And then I got Crohn's disease at the same time, which wasn't fun. Anyway, look, my 20s were garbage and I didn't get a lot done then, other than writing new descriptions of stomach pain. But in 2012, I decided to do the Clarion Write-a-thon. I decided that, like, look, I'm almost 40. I'm never going to make it to Clarion. I'm going to do it on my own. So I did the Write-a-thon. Clarion is a prestigious 6-week writing workshop for science fiction writers. And they run a write-a-thon for the same time, the same period, 6 weeks, and you sign up on their website and you pledge. And I pledged that I would write 50 short stories in 6 weeks. And that really was the turning point for me because I did it. And that effort of just churning things out in the unit of story. I had done the thing before where I tried to write 1,000 words every day for a year and last to about March, you know. I'd done the thing where you try to write 5 pages every morning when you wake up, and that lasted about a week. But that I set the unit as a completed story with a beginning, middle, and end. I set it as a minimum of 1,000 words. And they were pretty crap, but I ended up selling ultimately 10 years later, I looked back and I had turned 25 of those into drafts that sold. And one of those short stories was called The Origins of the Stardust Gang. And it turned into the chapter in Galactic Hellcats, which is titled The Origin of the Galactic Hellcats. One of my writing workshop buddy, I took the story to my writing workshop. It was the longest one I wrote during the write-a-thon. And my writing workshop all said, this is a novel. You have summarized all this detail about these 3 characters. This is a novel. And they were right. And my friend Mike said, and change the name. They should be the Galactic Hellcats. So the rest is history.
Oh my gosh, this is so inspiring. I love like a full circle like type of ending in books and in real life. That is so cool. So freeze your darlings, sell your darlings, kill your darlings, revive them, kill them again, revive them again.
Yeah.
All of these are excellent, excellent tips. Oh my goodness. Also in the chat, everyone's loving the spitefulness because we're all here for that. I think that's a lot of writers, that's our drive, right? You tell me I can't, I tell you I will, and I'll show you, you know, and you did. She's like, I'm gonna be a software developer and I'm gonna be a writer. How about that? I'm gonna do both. And then some.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a linebacker, you know, it's whatever. So that is so amazing. I love that. I do want to hear less of my voice. So if anyone wants to raise their hand, comments, questions, concerns, praise, we will take all of it, please, the next 5 minutes. Yeah, or in the chat too, if you don't want to say anything out loud. Kat.
So I would love to hear more about your specific process because from everything you've said, I feel like we have a very similar way of writing and thinking about writing. But I would love to hear more about like how you specifically visualize the words on the page and how you kind of go from sentences and a line on the page to a paragraph or a chapter, or like how that kind of works for you, like the craft behind the actual writing.
Okay. Yeah, I think that one is just to acknowledge that, you know, prose craft is different from plot craft. So when I'm outlining, I'm thinking plot craft. And also that you can always change something, right? You can always change something and you can always save it. The current novel I'm working on, I deleted 10 chapters and then I rewrote them and then I deleted 8 of those chapters. But I saved them in a separate file and saved them because you never know. There might be something in there I can glean later. I have a folder on my computer called garbage for things that I don't want to put in trash. And sometimes it's a question. I'm very goal driven, and I don't know, part of it is just like also being fueled by my endless well of deep insecurity, that like I have to keep writing to prove that I'm good enough. And if I ever stop, I'll drown. So I'm for one thing, I'm always working on like 3 things at once, or 4, or sometimes 5, or sometimes 6. And that's where that works in progress list becomes really handy. Because I'm like, okay, can I start a new work in progress? Let's look at the list. How many pots do we already have on the stove, Marie? And the other thing is that I find that a good way to keep my productivity up is to give myself permission to write badly first. So when sometimes I sit down and, I've written a sentence and the sentence says, somehow they escape, and I replace it with, you know, he throws a bomb and they escape. And then I replace it with, she dove into a shoulder roll and hurled something into the window. What was that? Asked Margot. And then the explosion hit, So, I kind of think of this as just like, I think of the first draft of anything as just putting clay on the wheel, you know? I'm getting more clay and more clay and more clay. And once the clay is there, now I can shape it and smooth it into that vase that it wants to be, or that I'm going to make it. Does that make sense? And then, yeah, always thinking about it when I'm doing, I think the most important thing that a writer can do is walk their dog, or wash dishes, or clean your bedroom. It's amazing how clean the house gets when I'm on deadline. But because you need physical activities that don't engage your brain so that you can ruminate. Yes, baby, we're gonna go walk soon. Speaking of,
They heard walk the dog, you're like, that's me.
yes, she just made this like mournful howl. So I have a pit bull. She's right next to me. She's always right next to me.
Your writing buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my
She goes
god.
walkies at 9 p.m. 9 p.m., baby. Learn to read a clock. Okay, I'm gonna lift up the laptop so you can see the doggy.
Yes, please. I don't want to ask, but oh, baby.
Wawa. Wawa.
Oh,
There. Good girl. Good girl, Wawa.
oh, so cute. I love that. I love that. And you're so right. Just doing the mundane things. When I get like, stuck, I feel like I just go for a walk, or I go observe people, or I walk my cat, let's call it. So
But yeah, anyway, I was just thinking like, the compliment that you've done so much when you're so young, and I'm not actually that young, but I mean, I sold my first story at 40, so it's been 10 years and I've done a lot in 10 years, but a lot of it was built into the previous 30 years of failure, which kind of built a backlog of half-finished ideas. And I definitely learned how not to do things, and I kept journals, so.
that's why we're so thankful for people like you, artists like you, who are willing and brave enough to be vulnerable and tell us about like your journey and not just your success. Because a lot of us in this Harvard Extension School are starting careers in our 30s, 40s, and we feel like, oh, it's too late, or I've missed out, or I'm having a late start. But no, and people who aren't creatives don't understand. It's like, oh, you want to be a writer? Like, just write it. Like, why does it take you 10 years to write one book? I'm like, if only you knew. If only you knew. So thank you so much for all of the knowledge and love and laughs that you've given us. It has been so, so wonderful having you here. I'm definitely going to look into your courses, like real talk. We are going to definitely plug in all the plugs, and adding this on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. So we'll put it there too. We'll be looking out for your movie, Hellcats, Galactic Hellcats. Yes, yes. Or
You
the
don't have to read it, just buy it.
Yeah.
It makes a great paperweight, or a coaster. Now available in audiobook that you can also just buy. Our
I love it. I love it.
doggy needs some shoes, so baby needs some
Right.
shoes.
Add it to your Christmas list, everyone. Just buy it. Oh my
You know,
God.
I should just put pictures of koala on everything because pit bulls are very good at looking sad.
Yes, and then that one song in every commercial, in the arms of an angel. Yeah, support your local authors, bookstores, all the things. I love that. Well, does anyone else have any last minute questions? I don't want to take too much of your time, Mary. I know you're busy. Or if you have any last minute things you want to grace us with, Kat, go ahead. Interrupt me. Everyone interrupt me.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, what are you currently working on right now and where can we look out for that?
I am currently writing a sequel to Galactic Hellcats. It is called Galactic Hellcats 2, Hellcats in Love. It's from the point of view of Andre the robot. If you've read Galactic Hellcats, you know Andre. He's such a fun voice. I'm having so much fun with him. And it doesn't have a publisher because unfortunately the publisher for Galactic Hellcats folded. So, right now, all proceeds for Galactic Hellcats go direct to me because they just reverted all the rights to me. Yay. And I have a novel called Mott the Stupid, which is Tolkien's orcs, but science fiction at a lost human colony. And that is currently under consideration at a publisher, but they haven't responded yet. Brains. Oh, wait, I could load up my website and it'll tell me what I have coming soon. This is why we have author websites, because I know I have some stories coming out soon. I do have a story that just came out in Clark's World called Rail Meat, which is about a professional thief working as human ballast in yacht races. The Handmaiden Alchemist appeared in Analog in January. There's a true tale or science fiction tales of the Space Force coming anthology. I have a story in that called A Tight Fit. What we telepath when we telepath about love is my homage, which will appear in an anthology called For a Friend, and a story called She's a Rescue, which is about dogs in space, kind of. Dogs and custody issues in space. And that will appear in Fantasy and Science Fiction magazine fairly soon. They said it was going to be in January, but it wasn't. So I assume they just had difficulties and it'll be in their next one. Oh yes, and I have a story in Robotic Ambitions. I think it's kickstarted, so it should be coming soon. It should be out very soon. Yeah, and that story is about nurse robots organizing for collective action with their patients. Oh, it is out. Good. So that's called Robotic Ambitions. It's an anthology about robots with jobs. And I was invited to contribute, which was really I've never been an anchor author on an anthology before. Makes me feel very cool.
That is so cool. And I love how you have fans who know things more than you do about your own work. Like that is goals. That's so awesome.
Like I said, I tend to work on like 5 things at once. Everybody thinks like, how do you live, Marie? And I'm like, I don't know. Actually, I'm kind of a bite off more than I can chew until I burn out kind of person. So,
And then you go hiding or fake your death for 10 years and then you come back with like a bunch of new things.
idea. I'm writing that one down.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Some people call it a sabbatical. I call it the Agatha Christie method. Fake death, take a spa day. Jack had a question?
Yeah.
No?
Oh.
Okay.
Should I comment? Well, oh, I guess for all of us who want to keep following your journey, is there a social media that you're most active on?
So I'm most active on Blue Sky. People do Blue Sky. I'm Reesie, Reasie at Blue Sky. And um I'll just put that in the chat. I still tweet. I don't really go there for content anymore, but I basically copy posts from Blue Sky onto Twitter when I'm like, oh, this is pretty good. I should put this on the tweets too. And I'm also on Wandering Shop for Mastodon, but again, I just copy from Blue Sky. I don't know why Blue Sky is the one that has won the battle for my heart, but it has. And I'm on Instagram. You can follow me on Insta, get all the cute pictures of me before I turn old, which could happen any day now.
It'll be 40 years from now, probably.
This is just genetics. I don't know. This is some kind of blue collar mutt stuff because like I don't wear makeup and I use soap. And that's it. Oh, a couple of years ago when I was on the football team, they turned me on to cocoa butter. Just cocoa butter. Yeah. A little bit of cocoa butter, like a little bit goes a long way. Put it right there and I put it right there. Yeah.
Noted. Yes. I feel like you should also think about writing like comedy, like just like pure comedy or comedy sketch. Like
I love writing funny stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you have
No,
very good speaker, which is actually really nice to see because I struggle with that. Like I'm good at expressing myself and writing when I have time to edit my thoughts. But when I'm speaking, I'm like, so if you
if
have a
I
class
didn't
with that.
if I didn't restrain myself, every single character of mine would be a wielder of witty one-liners. So that's why I forced myself to have Zuleika, the character who doesn't like to talk. She's so hard to write for me, but I did it.
We love that for you. Jack.
Yes, I really regret being an hour late, but I'm in Hawaii and I got confused about the time zones like I do sometimes. Um, so I'm glad it's being recorded. I'm going to go back and hear the whole thing. But I have a question, and you can just ignore me if someone has already asked this. But and I'll just see it in the recording. But I'm interested in hearing about what you do for promotion. Uh,
Yeah.
and I would really like to hear specifically not just what you do, but what you think has really worked for you. Thank you.
No, yeah, it's a very good question. And promotion is unfortunately like as important as writing these days. You don't get to back in the old days, like if I had actually sold those novels I sent out when I was in high school in the 80s, you just sold the novel and then the publisher did the publicizing and you could be a recluse. Like we're all introverts anyway. But except me, I'm not. I can't even pretend. I couldn't even say that with a straight face. But most of my writer friends are introverts and very uncomfortable being in public. Fortunately, I love to hear myself talk. So most of what I do for promotion is I go to conventions, science fiction conventions. I enjoy them. I get on paneling and I talk about other things. Nobody likes that person who shows up and is on the panel and answers every question about, I don't know, like dogs in science fiction with, well, in my novel. I also kind of made a vow to myself to be more self-promoting this year. I recently got a rejection on a novel. This is just going to tell you even more behind the scenes, where the publisher was like, oh my God, we loved this book. I mean, personally, it's the best book ever, but your sales figures aren't good enough for us. So I couldn't get the rest of the company behind it. You have to already be a success, is the galling thing. So I was like, all right, gloves are off. I am going to pimp Galactic Hellcats and the Gods Awoke like nobody's business. And I read some online articles, and one of them was, so the thing I'm changing is like, I am being a little more deliberate about social media, where I am posting one pure promotional post a week. Right now, I'm doing them always on Monday. I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but like one buy my book a week, or one, I mean, it's not always buy my book, but like this Monday's post was the redesign of the cover of The Gods Awoke that says now Hugo finalist on it. You know, finally, I'm acknowledging my co-author, Hugo finalist. That fellow has written a lot of things with a lot of great people. Yes, it now says Hugo finalist. So that was it. I just had a cropped picture of the cover showing the new words and said, check it out. So I do one of those every week now, and I've been doing it for 3 weeks. So I can't tell you if it's working yet, but I also keep a blog. I've always kept a blog. I post on Thursdays. You can check out my blog. I've actually had people who seem to be fans of my blog. I mostly write about how to write, because obviously I care about the craft and I care about analyzing the craft. I don't just say, huh. Like one of my friends says, Marie, you finish everything you start. I'm like, no, I don't. Oh, yes, I do now. And I actually went back through my journals and I was like, how did I become the person who finishes everything when I used to be the person who finished nothing? So when I do that kind of self-reflection, it usually ends up being a blog post before it becomes a class. So yeah, follow my blog every Thursday, more or less. And things like this. This is right here. This is self-promotion. I say yes to everything. If somebody wants to hear me talk, if they want me to drive to their little bookstore in the middle of nowhere, I do it. Because even if I only end up talking to like 5 people at that little nowhere bookstore, that's 5 people who wouldn't have heard of my book before, or me.
You're just oozing positivity and just optimism and just go-getter type of mentality, and we live for that. I love that. I'm so like inspired right now. I'm so thankful that you reached out and we were able to do this, and you just got a handful of fans. I'm for sure. I already had Galactic Hellcats in my cart. I was just waiting for this one to finish this one to order it. So now I'm gonna be looking for the sequel too. Like I'm stoked. Manifesting success, Kat said. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, we will definitely help promote you as much as we can. We're also a startup, so we're trying to promote ourselves, but you know, collaboration goes a long way. You never know who's going to be looking at you. I also know for our account, what's helped is if you like mention anything, like let's say another author that you like and you tag them in your story, sometimes they will see it, sometimes they will like it. And you know, first impressions, I know I've like remodeled my Instagram profile and like my bio, because it's like, you know, people have 2 seconds to decide whether or not you're worth their time. And like it's really smart of you to write a blog that's not just about you, but how you can help someone. So, you know, even as an author, as a writer, you are offering a service. So that's a great way to market yourself. We might have to do another segment on marketing. My goodness. But we would love you to co-host any of our events for more collaborative activities.
I'll let you know how my more posting thingy works out. My experiment in self-promotion. But yeah, tag people, think about what your audience is going to want, right? It's not about what I want, it's about what the audience wants. That's the way to get people interested. Yes, baby, it's not 9 yet.
Oh my goodness. Well, I won't rob any more of your time. Thank you so much for coming, Mary. It's been such a pleasure. And thank you all for joining us. And I know Jack's going to be one of the many people who are going to be replaying and watching this. I'm going to rewatch it, take notes. Lots of insight. So thank you so much, Mary, and we will keep in touch. This was awesome. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.